move me do it, you can't probably do it.
I see if you just tapping away there for a bit. And then pretend you hear a noise and like just look up to look around. And then go back to lovely. Welcome back. It's March. I'm a farm vet, hence the bags under the eyes. That's normal, don't panic. This morning it's not your typical firefighting spring job, no emergency, but it's still just as important, if not more important. So I'm gonna get there because I'm already late and we'll get stuck in. Right, we're here on farm. You might recognise this farm from the very first vlog we did with the Whitbreads and the Galloways. We were peeding and we were bleeding for yonis. Richard, the farmer here, has recently bought a new belted Galloway bull. So today we're going to be doing a sheath wash, and I'll show you what that means. And we're also semen testing him. Bull breeding soundness examinations, as we call them, are a really important part of being a beef vet, and I'll explain why that is when we get into it. A bull breeding soundness examination, or a BBSE, is just a type of MOT for working bulls. Often it's done pre or post sale, but really it should be done every year, part of the calendar for anyone using a bull to get cows in calf. A bull's fertility can change significantly over time, so previous performance does not guarantee future success. To start, the bull has to have good fundamentals. That means good general health, good body condition, good feet and locomotion, and good eyes. The next part of the BBSE is a good feel of the genitalia, just to make sure there aren't any lumps, bumps, or any asymmetries or anything which might indicate a problem. We also take a scrotal circumference. That is a direct measure of his serving capacity, and interestingly it's also correlated with just how fertile that bull's daughters then go on to be. After the external genital exam, we move on to the final part of the BBSE, and that's semen analysis. If you've watched the previous video from this farm, you will remember that the Galloways are notoriously hairy, hence this chap needs a bit of manscaping to allow decent access to his equipment. The most common way of obtaining a sample is through something called electroejaculation. Now that sounds very dramatic, but hopefully you'll see here that it's pretty innocuous. First thing, the bull requires a gentle warming up through a gentle massage of his prostate, no sniggering at the back, and it's now that the vet gets a good opportunity to feel the internal genitalia, such as the vesicular glands and the ampullae. Once the bull's warmed up, you can see Richard there looking for some dripping. He gets a lubricated probe inserted rectally with plenty of care. That probe then stimulates the prostate so he can produce a semen sample on the spot. It's worth pointing out to all the non-vets out there that this probe, there's no vibration, there's no electrical shock. In fact, if you put your finger on the probe while it's running, you won't feel a thing. It's a very subtle and very targeted stimulation of the appropriate genitalia. So I leave the probe in Richard's capable hands and I go to catch the sample. I don't want to catch the watery pre-ejaculate, so I'm seeing the colour of that fluid on my glove and I wait for the really cloudy good stuff before I catch any. Now we use repurposed icing bags to catch semen samples. You've just got to be careful not to frost your cupcakes with this stuff. I then sprint over to my microscope to examine the sample while it's still nice and warm. I look at a number of characteristics, the overall density, the degree and direction of movement and the shape of the sperm, plus a few other things. Now that's a very, very whistle-stop tour of the BBSE, and in the future, if people are interested, just say so in the comments if you are, I'll dedicate a future video to it. Now, on to the sheath washing. Why on earth do we do it? Well, it's specifically for an infection called Campylobacter. You may well be familiar with the human version, which leads to a very upset stomach. In cattle, a related Campylobacter causes venereal disease, the end result of which is cows that abort or resorb their pregnancies in the early stages. The percentage of cows affected is often pretty dramatic, so this is why when farmers go out to buy a bull, the vets will recommend using a virgin bull, and often we wince as well at the idea of a bull being loaned out to several different farms. It's not out of some puritanical streak. but because there are severe implications for cow health and cow fertility, not to mention the farmer's bottom line. It often takes several years for herds to fully recover from a Campylobacter outbreak. If a farmer does buy a non-virgin bull for whatever reason, then we encourage them to allow for the worst case scenario and essentially assume it has Campylobacter, even though the chances of it having that particular infection are pretty low. To mitigate the risk, we do this sheath wash with an antibiotic suspension. This gives us a good chance of clearing any infection which might be there. Basically, we pass a catheter just past the penis nice and carefully, as you can imagine, up to a fold called the sigmoid flexure. An antibiotic is infused and then massaged for several minutes. I know, don't I get the glamorous jobs? Okay, so that's us done sheath washing. Good result from the semen test as well. So, Richard, how do you feel about that?
Happy? Very happy.
With your new purchase? Yeah, good. What was his name? We didn't catch his name.
Well, he's got one of these long titles. I think he's called Thornthwaite Hulbert, but he answers to Curly, which is a lot easier. You know?
Curly. We'll call him Curly for now.
I call him Curly.
So, I'm going to do a little voiceover about why we do the sheath washing. But while we're here, I just thought we'd talk a bit about what Richard and Claire and the family do here. Something they tried this or the last year. It was direct selling, so they produce a lot of lamb, a lot of beef here, and most of it will be, how will most of it be sold, Richard?
Most of it is either through the mart or a marketing organisation that
Yeah.
we work with, private stock organisation.
But you decided you'd give it a go, try and direct sell, as in, off farm basically to as cut lambs, half carcasses, or as...
It really started with us wanting to do the cattle side
Yes.
of it. Once we moved into the cattle, it was one of the areas where we thought we could retain a bit more value ourselves.
Yes.
We could actually develop a customer base, so we could meet people who were actually buying our product and have conversations which would be, one, it would be interesting, but hopefully in an age where I think people need to maybe have a desire to know more about farming. It's a chance to do a little bit of education, but listen to feedback as well.
Yeah.
And hopefully pass on a decent product,
Yes.
But I think, one thing we're very clear on is that, we do need the marts, we do need that. This is not something that was going to be something that's going to grow massively. It's going to work in companionship with everything else.
Absolutely.
And really the lamb thing fell out of, when people came and bought the beef boxes, people were saying, well, do you do lamb? And we had so many inquiries that it was a case of, well, why don't we give this a go?
Yeah.
And, we ended up killing 15, 16 lambs last year, which we sold as half lambs, and it was great, you retain more value, and it's just interesting meeting the people as well.
Absolutely, yeah, definitely that whole connection between people and their food lacking. That's probably been lacking since the 1960s, isn't it? Probably, but even more so.
Before our time. That's for sure.
I remember it well. No, good. So yeah, 15, 16 lambs. I imagine a nice sort of introduction to it. I mean, compare how many lambs do you produce here in a year?
We sell over 800 lambs off the place.
So it's a drop in the ocean, really, but it's a nice sort of addendum, sort of nice thing to try, I guess.
Definitely.
And how many cattle did you sell?
We actually sold 2 fattened steers last year.
Were they blue greys? Were they all?
No, they were Galloway pures.
Galloways.
Pure Galloway steers.
Right. Okay. And so you took them down. Was it down to Durham?
Well, it's one of those things where I think you call it serendipity. This is something we always wanted to do.
Yeah.
Didn't quite know how we were going to do it, but I went to a party, and it was a year past January, where there was a guy I met who had actually sold a yard scraper to.
Actually, I was about to say, we'll remember parties, don't we? We'll remember what those
definitely.
We'll remember what those are, hopefully.
Having a conversation with him, and remembered that he farms at Longfram, and he's got a small business there where he has a cold store, and he does butchery.
Of course,
so
that's at Lee.
Got into conversation with Lee at Christmas Farm, and the plan all suddenly came together, and Lee did a service whereby he came and picked the stock up off the farm, took them away to Dewitt's, slaughtered at Dewitt's, back to his, hung at his, hung for sort of 28 days the beef, and he butchered, provided a full service of the boxes for us.
Lee and Beth over they're in Longfram, which isn't far away. I'll stick their details here They do a tremendous amount of
they
their
do.
own stuff. You know, they
Yeah.
sell their own meat, sell their own veg boxes, loads and loads of other stuff. So I'll stick a link in the
Their
description
business
as well.
has actually grown probably quite significantly through COVID.
Yeah.
Absolutely. Certainly right through the vegetable side as well.
Yeah, so really nice people doing really good stuff. But no, good. So 2 steers, sort of 15, 16
Yep.
lambs, and will you do it again next year?
Well, the plan is this year is hopefully to do two in the spring and 2 in the back end.
And how do people say, like, you're local or even not that local, and you want to find out how do you get hold of some Cartington meat?
Well, we've got a Facebook page which has been there for 3 or 4 years now, and we actually, the first time I advertised it through that, and it kind of just went bang.
Yeah.
They almost went, and I got to the point where I have we sold 20 odd boxes and got a waiting list as well. So,
Great. So there's plenty of demand by the sounds of it. There's plenty of space for other people to get
I think there's plenty
involved.
of space in the marketplace, and I think what's happened the last sort of year with the COVID thing has hopefully got people asking the questions about where their food comes from and wanting to know where it comes from and having that security. It was quite amazing when people came and picked it up at the door. They were saying, "Oh, we've been past the farm and seen your stock in the field," you know. So
I think the one thing we all agree we need up here is a abattoir, because it will come full circle, I'm sure, and we'll get there eventually.
Hope so.
There's one more. Oh, and if you're a farmer or you're a smallholder, or what would you have any advice to them about direct selling?
I think it's like lots of things, and it's actually a lot easier than you would imagine.
Yes.
So all you have to do is apply to the council for a license, I think it is. And It's very easy. You basically just have to identify what it is. It tends to come through very quickly.
Mm-hmm.
Obviously, a bit of research on food standards, but we don't actually handle the product ourselves.
That'd be Lee.
It's Lee does all of that, so Lee has all the certification for that. And basically for us, we made the decision that people were going to come to us and get the product on the day it came to us. So it minimises the time of any requirements for refrigeration or anything like that.
Yeah.
We had a backup with a freezer just in case anything did go wrong, which we didn't need. And to be honest, it worked so smoothly.
Good. And did you get to try any of your own?
Oh,
beef?
absolutely.
And what did you think?
Well, that would be biased, wouldn't it?
Yeah. I'm sure it's delicious. Right, Grant, thanks Richard.
No
That's
worries.
brilliant.
Take care.
That's me back. Horrible weather, and I've got to play this right because I always end up with a huge amount of dirty kit from a bull testing. It's just one of those jobs you need a lot of kit for. You're at the business end as usual, and it gets filthy. Now, I'm very lucky in that I don't have to clean that gear, but I always feel a bit guilty about leaving it for Hazel and Carol, who are the sort of practice administrators. They keep us right at Black Sheep, so I'm just going to see how delicately I can drop this gear off.